Good morning, everybody. Sawyer County Judge John Yackel is our very special guest today, Friday, May 27th, 2022. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live. It's been a busy month so far with a lot of guests, including Tom Tiffany, Rebecca Clayfish, Koo Lee, Kevin Nicholson, Kelly Westland, Kirk Anderson, and Kim Backstrom, Chris Fitzgerald, Brent Walk, Stephen Olakar, and more. You can watch a recording of those and all of our previous live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DrydenWire. That's probably the easiest place. We store all of them there. And of course, right here on our Facebook page under Live or our video tab. But today we're chatting with Sawyer County Judge John Yackel. John, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. I really am. You know, by the way, I looked this morning to see when the last time you were on, because you've been on a few times over the, several years, about 3 years now, maybe 4 years, and you were on 1 month ago today, May 27th, 2021, is when you were last on.
Oh, okay. Well,
so just look at your calendar for next year, and this will be our annual show.
Sure.
May 27th. And by the way, I have a photo of you and I on that show, and it's priceless. You need to take that photo. I can crop that out and put that on all of your signs when you're running for judge again. That's the photo that you need to use.
Well, I've been told that I am not a very good poker player in court, that I generally wear my expressions on my face, so or how I'm feeling.
I know. It was just awesome when I saw that. So how have you been? It's been a year.
Yeah, it's been a busy year. It's been a good year, and we're moving forward.
Right. So the last time that you were on, we talked about several things. I think like public defenders, bail, and bonds, and I certainly want to talk about that again, just because It's always nice to talk about. But of course, it was also about, is it a new building? I can't remember, or just an add-on, but making more room, and then another judge. So where are we on that? I thought I saw a picture of you on Facebook recently. I don't know, a groundbreaking or something like that. So where are we on that?
Yeah, we're in the process of building. If you come into Hayward and you go up Main Street and you see the courthouse, 5th Street between the courthouse and the jail and the sheriff's department, it's completely closed down, torn up, and they're beginning the building process.
Beginning it. So when is that scheduled to be finished?
Scheduled to be done. The addition and the connecting of the two buildings is scheduled to be done sometime in July of 2023.
So just over a year from now.
Yep. And
when it's all done, what does that mean?
Well, as if you've watched the show before when I've been on, we've talked over the years about weighted caseload studies and the amount of caseload throughout the entire state. Sawyer County has been number one for I think probably 5 or 6, 7 years running. And it was a long process of getting the state to create a new judgeship and to get the county to provide the space for it, because that's in every county in the state, that's the relationship between the county and the state. The state provides the judge, the county provides the physical space. And Sawyer County needed a second judge, but they don't have the physical space. And 2 years ago, when the bill was passed, creating 12 new judgeships in Wisconsin, Sawyer County was slated to get one as long as they went through the process of building and providing the adequate space. They were on board with that, but they had a lot of questions. And, we gave them a lot of information and answers, and it was a lot of discussion back and forth. And through the process of the last year, they've been designing and just kind of refining and spending as cheaply as possible, but yet not sacrificing function to build this. And it was finally approved at the end of March. I mean, there were approvals all along the way, but that final one signed on the dotted line, and now the construction company is moving forward, and all systems go. And so beginning on August 1st of 2023, Sawyer County will have 2 circuit court judges.
August 1st. So that is going to be for the second judge, right? It will be a spring election. And if I'm understanding that correctly, and I could be wrong, so please correct me, if there's more than 2 people that are running for or announce their candidacy to be on the ballot, for that judge position, then there would be like a February,
Sure.
right? Kind of a February election thing. And then the top two, because it's a nonpartisan, right? Then it would be an April election for those final two, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So my circuit court judge in Wisconsin is a 6-year term.
Yep.
And sheriff and DAs throughout the state are all every 4 years, and they all are on the same time frame.
Yeah.
Judges are different. Every year you have judicial elections throughout the state. I was reelected in Sawyer County in April of 2021, and I started my second term on August 1st of 2021. So I'm in the first year of my second term.
Okay. So you won't have another election for 5 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And so then the person who or people who are wanting to run for the branch 2 in Sawyer County, they have to take out their nomination papers starting December 1st. And like you said, if there were more than 2 people that got their signatures in and got on the ballot, there would be a February primary. The remaining 2 would then run for a spring election, April election for branch 2.
How does that work then? Because in Washburn we have one judge,
Yep.
Angie Winton. Rusk, they have one. Burnett, they have one. Sawyer, up until now, has one. Obviously, Barron, I think 3. I don't know about Polk. It's 2, 3, or 4,
2.
somewhere in there. 2, okay. But most of our coverage anyway has one judge. So now there's a second judge. How does that dynamic work? Is there a hierarchy where it's I'm the senior, so if there's some kind of please educate us on this.
Sure.
Is there something where the judges have to sit and meet? Maybe it's just about policies in a courtroom or something random like that where there's 2 people, so it can't be 3-person vote and 2 other 3. So is it like a seniority thing? And how does that work?
Well, I guess to the point of your question, the most important person in that discussion is the chief judge of the district. Wisconsin is divided into several different districts. We're what's known as District 10. They've eliminated some, so there's not actually 10, but we're in the 10th district, and that encompasses Eau Claire, Menominee, all the St. Croix, Polk, Douglas, Bayfield, etc.
A lot of northwest Wisconsin for the most part. Got it.
And so the Supreme Court appoints a chief judge. And right now our chief judge is Judge Maureen Boyle out of Barron County. And so she has the administrative authority over the district. So she's the judge along with the district court administrator who decides, like if somebody substitutes me on a case, they're the ones that decide based on caseload and what everybody's doing. Okay, well, we're going to assign this case to an out-of-county judge, and that judge is going to go into another county.
Okay.
So the answer then is yes. In each county, generally speaking, it's either if you have multiple people, I think it's the chief judge that will present or appoint the presiding judge. But generally speaking, in this kind of situation, when it starts, the senior judge, me, because I've been there over one term, I will be the presiding judge. Does that give me a great amount of authority over the other judge? No, but as far as maybe policy goes or how we interact with the DA's office or how we work together for scheduling and who's on intake and who's not, those are kind of the smaller things that we would have. But generally speaking, that in the courtroom, there's no difference between the judges.
Okay, so it's basically like Jerusha and I here at the house, where we do everything together, and when it's like parenting or whatever, she can do what she does and I do what I do. But there are going to be some times where there is a senior person, and that is, of course,
her.
Yes. Yes, 100%. I'll default to her. She has seniority here at the house.
And then obviously if there's any conflict or anything, then the chief judge steps in and makes
sure. So that in that case, that would be my dad.
Right.
Or
a marriage counselor or something.
Right. So how long have you actually been judge?
I took office here in Sawyer County on August 1st of 2015.
2015, so 7 years.
Yep, coming up on 7 years.
So 7 years ago versus today, what's changed being the judge in Sawyer County? Outside of or aside from the just the amount, the volume, but are you seeing different cases? What has changed, if anything, in 7 years?
The volume, obviously, you've already pointed that out, but that is the big change.
Okay.
That is what has facilitated the need for an additional judicial officer in Sawyer County. That's what's facilitated a lot of different things. Just for example, I mean, if you look at our caseload, there's one judge in Sawyer County, and last year there were 411 felony cases, just felony cases filed in Sawyer County.
You've always, by the way, I remember looking at that report about a year or two ago,
Yep.
and the sheer number of felony cases. And if anyone just wants to kind of just do a comparison, literally just go to CCAP, put in the date of any year or over time. So you could do like January 1st, 2022 to today's date, May 27th, in Sawyer County, and select CF, or felonies, and just look to see what number they're on, and then just compare that to a Rusk and a Washburn. And we're relatively the same size, around 15,000 residents.
Right.
And yours was way more than everybody else's that I compared to of similar size. Why?
Well, that's a difficult question. I do believe that part of the answer lies with we have a very good law enforcement with the Sawyer County Sheriff's Deputies, City Police, LCOPD. They do a very effective job of getting undercover people out there and doing traffic stops. And when they're doing traffic stops, they're being very thorough within the bounds of the law, and they're just very proactive. Now, I can't speak to what, let's say, Burnett or Washburn's doing. I know that they're doing the best that they can as well. But we are a big tourist hub, and I think that we just have a lot of people coming in just to the general area, and Sawyer County is fairly tough on drugs because it's just I view it as a poison that goes out. I mean, yes, as a user, you are creating a market for these drugs. But if you are dealing and you are even on a small level and you're bringing this stuff in, that there's two aspects to it. Yes, you are a individual who is addicted to these drugs, and we want to make sure that we can get you off of these drugs. But yet you are also contributing to really poisoning this community, and that's a serious thing. And I mean, if you just look everywhere throughout this country, the amount of drugs has increased to such an extent. And when I started my career 22 years ago, we were dealing with cocaine and crack, and there was heroin out there. But the pureness of these drugs has just, I mean, I can't even begin to explain it. But I see every day individuals who are trying to get off these drugs. I know that a lot of people want to focus in on why they started, and I think that's a legitimate thing. But for a court system, we don't have really the time or the resources to dive into, and I don't have the training as a therapist to see why you started these drugs. But I do know that there are people who are trying to get off of them, and it's almost impossible. Almost impossible. Now, it's not that it is, but I think we as a society go around saying, well, we need treatment. Let's get treatment for this and treatment for that, treatment for drugs. We have to send them to treatment. And after a few years on the bench, I started asking, well, what is treatment? And now, if you go to inpatient treatment, that is obviously I've never been to inpatient treatment, but I understand the concept of it, that somebody goes to a facility and they're there for a long time and they are focused in on their sobriety and the outside world is shut out. That is expensive. That is, open to only a very few people. And so what we talk about in treatment, like in drug courts and this, we're talking about outpatient treatment where you go talk to your counselor for, an hour a week or 2 hours a week, talking about your drug addiction, and then you go home and you try to stay off these drugs. But in a small rural community, you then leave your office or your doctor's office or wherever you're at, and then you drive home and you drive past the dealer's house where you have bought drugs before, and then you go into your community and your neighbors may be drug users and they know that you are, and they're going to come over and they're going to say, are you too good to not party with us? And it is a problem that is more than just, hey, I'm addicted to drugs. There's no sober living. You can't get away from it. When when I started, I used to say to people, hey, you know what? Leaving the community is not really an escape. It's not really the answer to your addiction. And as I've learned over the years, I've stopped saying that, because if somebody says to me, I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, now I realize, hey, if I'm trying to stay clean and I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, but I want to remove myself from the pressure of having to reuse, well, then I got to go to a place where nobody knows me and I don't know anybody. So I don't know that house is a place where I can get drugs, or that they're not, that I'm not a user, so nobody's pushing it on me. You know, I mean, I can blend in. And so now I mean, if that's what they want to do, if that's what you need to do, then do it.
Yeah, it's a change of environment. Yeah, so if I was, I don't know, let's say running DrydenWire, there's too much stress and I turn to drugs. And now, I'm addicted to drugs. In that inpatient you're referring to, assuming I could afford it, I go there, and that's great. I'm not knocking that at all. That is wonderful. But that would be for, I don't know, let's say 30 days. Well, I'm removing myself from the equation here in terms of all that stress and what led me to do that. And hopefully that would be great. But eventually I'm going to have to come back and keep doing what I was doing. And that's where it's, well, boy, now I'm right back where I started. I mean, it was great for 30 days, but I can't live there. So right. I don't think that's a bad idea about just change of scenery, a different environment.
And of course, these local rural communities, I mean, there's no housing. I don't know how it is in Washburn County, but I know that housing is super tight in Sawyer County. So when you're talking about housing and you're talking about sober living and sober housing, we just need housing. I mean, and it's so difficult for people, I mean, who are doing that. It is difficult. And you have these individuals who are on drugs, and and I've said before, you have people on one side saying, why are we spending money on these people? They've decided it was their choice to put the drugs in the body in the first place. And I understand that argument. And then on the other side, there's like, you should never place people into custody who are drug users. And I'm like, I understand that point too. Yeah. But for the people who are saying we should throw them away because they're doing it to themselves, why are we going to spend our resources? Well, you either are going to leave them in the community to spread the poison to other people, or you're going to open your pocketbook to house individuals in custody to keep them from doing this. Then on the other side, you have to recognize we really do not have cheap, efficient, reliable treatment for meth, heroin, and I'll get into fentanyl here briefly. But do people recover? Yes. But it seems to me that the people that recover are the ones who have something inside them, a human spirit that just burns so brightly that in the midst of all this addiction, they just refuse to be destroyed by it. They have a long process back. And so the few people that I can think of that have made it out of the darkness are really just unique people who have great spirit, and it's a tremendous story. And so to people who are on the road to recovery and who have gotten pretty far into it, I've always told them in the courtroom, you got to, if you get to this point where you are in recovery and you get stable and you are healthy, you have got to be one of those people that goes and helps other people who are in that situation to lead them out. To me, that's the biggest resource that we have. If we can get people, any number of people, to recover from these drugs, those people are some of the best resources that we have, because they know what it's like. They know the process. They're familiar with it. Experience is a big thing. And so I really challenge people who I think are serious to me about they're in recovery. I always challenge them, especially people who do small level dealing, because they're like, I'm an addict. I wouldn't do it if I wasn't an addict. Well, then I'm like, okay, the best way to repay the community once you is to get yourself clean, and then to help us help other people.
Brian Cole, that's one of the reasons I respect him so much. And we do his Sunday message, and that's more of obviously about God and etc. But is the other part of him is the going to schools and talking about this. I mean, this is the dude that was in prison for, 20 some years of his life, or 30, I can't remember how long it was. And that's why he goes, and he doesn't get paid for this stuff, right? All he asks for is just pay for my travel to get there. And he will go to schools and talk about that because he feels that's part of my responsibility. I have recovered. And he goes to jails and does and talks to them about the drugs. Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know if a lot of people do it. And maybe if they don't, maybe it's a little understandable because that's a tough world to kind of be in. Now you're kind of back in that world and you see it. But you're right. Who else would be better? It's like a parent. My parents have gone through this. That's why it's easy. It's easier for them to say, Ben, do this, and Ben, don't do this, because we've been there before. We know what that's like. So that's the best teacher.
Yep. And it seems to me that the people that I'm thinking of that are in recovery, they have that urge and that desire to do that.
Yeah.
Because especially if they've been part of the harm to the community, I have a lot of people that come in and say, I'm sorry what I did. I'm sorry that I hurt people. I'm sorry I'm hurting myself, my family. And I'm like, okay, the best way you can repay us back or that we'll accept your apology is to get yourself clean. And then if you are in a position to help others get out of the darkness, please help. You
had mentioned fentanyl, and I wrote that down, actually, so I'm glad you did. I know meth has run rampant in Sawyer for a while. I mean, it's everywhere in North Wisconsin, but it's really big in Sawyer. It was certainly, we talked about that last show a year ago. Fentanyl now, is that the new big thing, or are you not seeing much of it quite yet?
Well, when I started, it was bath salts and meth. Sure. And then meth went down, and then it was heroin. And then heroin went down, and it was meth. And then it was meth and heroin. And then it's been meth and heroin for years. And now I spoke with an investigator not too long ago who is telling me, because I'm part of this group now from the state court system that is starting some type of opioid training, so that as a judge on the bench, I can just increase my knowledge of what it's like and the effects on the body of opioids. Mm-hmm. And the investigator told me, as I was telling him about this class or this training that I'm involved with, mm-hmm. and he goes, it used to be that a couple of years ago we were starting to see fentanyl, the heroin laced with fentanyl. Mm. And now he goes, I challenge you should call up the Wisconsin crime lab and ask them if they even see any heroin in the fentanyl anymore.
What?
It is shifted to, there used to be heroin laced with fentanyl, to half and half, to fentanyl, and now there's not even any heroin laced in the fentanyl.
All right, so forgive my ignorance.
Yep.
I literally don't know how that, is it a pill? Is it a needle? Fentanyl. Do you smoke it? Is it like crack? What is it?
Well, I think it comes in pill form, but I think you can. I think you can grind it. I think you can. You can make it into a powder form. You can mix it with stuff. I mean,
weird.
You should probably talk to law enforcement. They have more knowledge on this.
I did ask Fitzy, and he's like, I don't know.
but what my understanding is that in the old days, your typical, hey, I'm a drug dealer here, and I have 20 grams of heroin.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to sell 20 grams of heroin because I'm going to cut it with something else, whether it be, flour or talcum powder, whatever, some other powder to increase my volume. So now instead of 20 grams, I've got 30 grams and it's all mixed together, and now I can sell more of it. So it's the business model, I suppose, from the drug world. And so fentanyl is still laced with other things to try to create the volume.
Oh, sure.
But now, I mean, the amazing thing about this fentanyl is that I've talked to a number of investigators who've talked to healthcare providers, mm-hmm. and they are saying there's no way that they can be taking the amounts that they're telling you. Well, why? They're like, because it would kill hundreds of people. But they are taking that amount. So they're building up a resistance to this, just like with heroin. I mean, it's an opioid family. So they are taking amounts that would kill you or I if we took it for the first time. There was that tragedy in Texas recently, in that school shooting, and there's been a few others on the news. One in Buffalo, I believe. When you see that stuff, and I'm sure this is out of the realm of a judge or your world, but maybe it isn't, I don't know, which is why I'm asking. When you see that stuff, what goes through your mind as an individual and as a parent and also as a judge when you see these things happen? That's a big question with all three groups. Well, obviously, when I see that on TV and what's happening, I react first as a parent because I have a child up at the school. My court security officer has stepchildren at another school and has a young child who's going to be in school soon. I have people that I work with who have kids up there. Some of our officers up at the school I know have kids up there. It is a unbelievable tragedy. I was talking to my wife the other night, and I was saying I can't even imagine being one of those parents who heard about the shooting, who knows their kids in the school, and you have that moment when you're reunited with your child and your child is safe and you're reunited. And she goes, yeah, but what about the other parents? And I said, I can't even process that. I don't even want to think about it because it's so unbelievably horrific and painful. And I guess the only thing that I have to say about that is I get that there's a political debate about guns in this country.
Sure.
And there's one side, and I have my opinions, but as a judge, I'm not, I'm here as a judge today, so I'm not going to offer what my personal opinions are on guns. Other than that, I have a court security officer who carries a gun in my courtroom, and I have I conceal carry in my courtroom because there's a danger there. If you want to eliminate all guns and take away the Second Amendment, or if you want to get concealed carry in the schools and let teachers carry, or have law enforcement officers in every school to be there, either way, it's going to cost resources, and either way, it's going to not be a perfect solution, because if you have law enforcement officers in there, there's obviously a scenario where they might not be at the right place at the right time, or something could go wrong. If you outlaw guns and you outlaw the Second Amendment, well, they outlaw drugs, and there's still drugs around. So I don't believe for a second that they're going to be able to eliminate all drugs. We have an open border in the South that's bringing drugs into this country at an unbelievable rate. Why would we be foolish to think that if we outlawed all guns in this country that guns wouldn't be coming into the country?
Right.
So while that political debate is going on, there has to be security in the school. When you have 4 schools and you have 2 officers, you need more than that.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. It's interesting that everything you just said was echoed with my wife and I. We had this exact same conversation a couple nights ago, and with the kids, and then also with Fitzy and I. It was a private conversation. I mean, it just wasn't on a show. It wasn't like a private. I'm just saying we were talking about it. That, yeah, guns, banning them, like, what's the answer? And I feel like we've having these conversations over and over. I don't feel like that's the answer. Like, I'm apolitical, and I don't care. I see both sides of this, but banning guns I don't think is the answer. Arming teachers, I don't think that's the answer necessarily. Mrs. Lawrence, your kindergarten teacher who's 75, is packing. I don't know if that's really what we want our teachers or need them to be. But the only thing I can come up with is having a cop in every single school, elementary, middle, and high school. It's going to cost resources, but I can't think of anything else. Like, there has to be a logical, rational, reasonable answer on how we can at least help this, help prevent this. We'll never stop it, but that's the only thing that I think is plausible, but it would cost a lot. But I think that has to be the only way we do it. I can't think of another one.
Here, when I started as judge in Sawyer County, there was no security. You could walk in with a bazooka off of the street, come into the courtroom, aim it, and there would be nobody stopping you. There would be nobody even doing it, and there wouldn't have been a recording of it either.
And that was just 7 years ago.
Yep. So in the span of about 7 months, 3 people that I worked with in a professional manner were murdered.
I remember.
The clerk of courts, a sheriff's deputy from a different county than Sawyer, and an attorney down in Wausau who I knew personal. Me and my wife were good friends with her. She was the one that was in that shooting where another officer died down there. During that time, I was going to the county board saying we need security in here, and their answer was, that's a lot of money. It costs a lot, and I get all those responses. But the same question to the county board that I posed to them would be to the school board, the county board, the town board, or the city of Hayward, or any municipality. I mean, I'm not just focusing on Sawyer County because, we're talking about throughout the country. Anybody that's having a worry about, is our school protected? And if it's not protected, if you don't have law enforcement in these schools, then my question is, what you're doing right now and you maybe think that it's adequate. If there was a shooting in your school and there were people who were killed, would the next day or when the schools reopen, would your security look different? Would your police presence at these schools look different? And if the answer is yes, why are you not doing it now? Why are you waiting?
There's very few times where throwing money to problem solves it, or is the answer. And I don't know if that is necessarily the answer, but I think that's the best answer we have right now. And I don't think that's throwing money away. So I 100% agree with you.
I am, if you look into my background, I tend to be a little bit more financially conservative when it comes to some of these. And where was I going?
The financially secured, fiscal, but putting a lot of money in. Like, I'm not a huge fan of that either. I'm just not.
I'm a financial conservative. If you look at my background, you probably can kind of tell where some of my positions are personally. Sure. Mm-hmm. We built this courthouse or this addition. We're building it in Sawyer County. It pains me to say, hey, we don't have an adequate facility. We have to go out there and ask the community to fund this. But if you want access to the court system, if you want the court system to work in Sawyer County, to address your concerns, to address thefts from your store, the drugs that are being dealt right in your backyard because there's not enough law enforcement available. Everybody supports cops. In generally speaking, in this idea of we want law enforcement to protect us. And so a lot of politicians will go and say, well, we need more cops on the street. We need them to address the crime. But then they stop there. So if you increase more police and they arrest more people, well, you need more public defenders, you need more district attorneys, and you need more judges, because then all of a sudden the bottleneck then shifts from maybe law enforcement to the judicial side of it, and you're not really gaining any ground, except you're arresting people and then you end up releasing them because the court system can't process it.
It's a feel-good thing, though, right? Of more cops, right? We can have more cops. It's something that we can see as a need. But you're right. We're solving one problem, but now we've created a couple other problems, and it kind of has to all work together.
I get how the world works, and I understand, and I probably have been guilty in the past of trying to make something sound feel good. But we're talking about our children. We're talking about a pattern here for years and years of what has been occurring. Every time we see a tragedy like this throughout the country, everybody starts talking about what we can do to protect our kids. Yeah. And then, hopefully we can roll the dice and avoid it happening to us. And
most of these, by the way, most of these things that are happening in schools, I don't know if anybody else has been paying attention to that. This is not in Chicago. This is not in Minneapolis. This is not in New York City. These are relatively rural communities where this is happening. Guess what? We're in rural communities in Northwest Wisconsin. That's what really concerns me. These are happening in places like ours. And I'm not trying to freak anybody out or, don't go pull your kids out of school right now. I'm just saying, but that's where they're kind of happening, is in the rural areas.
It's time. I mean, and like I said, I'm not taking a position on what the solution is. Guns, no guns, whatever. But right now, while the community, the elected leaders are debating and deciding what to do and what direction to go, we need some immediate protection.
Yeah. Why are 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old children doing these too?
That is a social question.
Yep.
You can look into what's been happening for the last 2 years with our kids, whether it's masking or staying home. You can look at what type of medications we're prescribing kids over the last 20 years. Those are societal issues, and it's time, I guess, that our state and our country says we have to start addressing some of these issues rather than just saying, well, we're going to let the court system decide.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. What do I have at my disposal? I have fines, I have jail, I have prison, I have probation. Well, what percentage of each of those is going to help you the best?
Yeah.
And even so, when I send them to treatment or programming or something like that, those are other individuals in the community. I mean, I can't solve why we have a limited discussion in the high schools throughout the state about the dangers of these drugs. Some people say, well, it just doesn't work. These kids don't listen. Well, I mean, I would be in favor of trying to create something that is going to, really show them what is going to happen if they go down that path. Is that going to save some? Yes. The problem is resources. And like I said, I don't want to get political here because I'm a judge and I'm supposed to be open. But if the question, at least for the federal government, is that we can't afford to give money to the states and to the local communities to help fortify these schools and to make sure that they're safe, then it's like, well, then why are we sending hundreds of billions of dollars over to another country for their issues?
There's always money.
That's right.
Just saying.
And it's just whether there's the will.
And honestly, and it's, you had said, you can't share some opinions, you're a politician. So I totally can. So, I really think, and this is not very popular opinion for a lot of people, and that's perfectly fine. Everyone has entitled to their opinions and their views and whatever. But I honestly think all this has pretty much started, not just this, but everything, our society and the hate and et cetera. This all stems from when we start removing God from the equation. I'm just saying, you take God out of the house and in parenting, just saying, that's not going to solve all the problems, but I do find that interesting. Again, that's my opinion. If you don't believe in God, that's fine. If you believe in a different thing, that's fine. It's just my opinion. Bonds. We always talk about bonds when you're on. So here's a weird question, and I'm sure you're not going to be able to answer this. If you do, it's going to be very politically correct kind of an answer. When you see bonds, so I have two questions here because I've had some politicians that have come on or some candidates that are running for things, and they say that we need to give judges more tools in their toolbox. So I want to ask you about that. But first, I'm sure you see other, maybe not just in our area, but Milwaukee or Kentucky, other things that you see or you hear about, and you see bonds that are being set. Now, obviously, you're not in the courtroom, and there's a lot of variables there. But when you see some, do you even kind of go, what? They got what? Do you ever think that way? Because you're human too, right? Or do you not pass any judgment? You're like, I'm sure that was the right thing to do.
I'm human. So the answer to your question is, of course I do. I certainly won't tell you which state or which court.
I'll cross off that follow-up question right now then. All right.
But everybody, whatever job you do, I mean, if you're, for you, even if you're watching somebody do an interview online, has a program or a podcast or something, well, you look at that and you're like, well, that guy does a good job or that woman does a good job. And I don't like the format of that show. I mean, so you're
sure.
always critical of it. Yeah. Judges are the same thing. We look at what other judges do and go, oh, that's an interesting thing. I mean, that's why we as judges, we get together and we do judicial education because we learn from other people. And sometimes we learn what we like to do and other things, well, I'm not going to do that because I don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. So, yes, of course, the answer to that question.
Yeah, sure. I look at other news outlets and they do a story and it's like, I wouldn't have done it that way. But my way isn't necessarily right. I just would have done it a different way. And I'm not being critical of them, but sometimes it's a little head scratcher. And I'm sure they do the same, to us. So when it does come to bonds, we have had some of those candidates. I can't remember which ones now, but I think like 3 or 4 now have brought this up regarding bonds. And it wasn't our judges aren't doing enough, or our DAs aren't doing enough, or they're just terrible. It was actually judges need more flexibility. We need to provide more tools in the proverbial toolbox. So as it sits right now, do you feel, as a judge, 7 years as a judge, do you feel you have all of the tools and resources and options available to you when it comes to specifically bonds?
That's a difficult question because I'm going to come at it a little bit different angle.
Sure.
The first thing is that, and this is not a criticism of the general public at all. The general public goes to work, raises their family, tries to relax on the weekends, or if they have that luxury, or during the week if they get some time off. They try to save the money for the future. They try to live their life as best they can. And if they're not lawyers and they're not working in the legal field, they simply just it's a complicated enough system that they don't understand. So I read some of the comments to myself or to other judges, on the DrydenWire, and
that's always entertaining.
I can accept criticism as the day is long. I really can. But what frustrates me the most is when somebody is critical and it's something that is just a complete misunderstanding of how the system works. And so their criticism isn't even relevant because it's just, you can see that they don't understand how the system works. It's for example, if somebody gets arrested for, somebody gets arrested for trafficking drugs.
Sure.
That person is on a bond. That person is charged with a crime, but you have people that are saying comments. Well, he confessed. Why are we even spending resources to give him a trial? Why are we not just locking them up? Or somebody says, a $5,000 cash bond. That's it for that poor victim. Well, wait a second here. This is a bond. They haven't been convicted of it yet. And if you get charged with a crime that you are innocent of, let's say the district attorney in Washburn County comes to Ben Dryden and says, hey, you know what? We think that you are trafficking drugs. We have evidence of it, and we're going to arrest you. We're going to charge you, and the judge puts you on a significant cash bond. And let's just say that you're completely innocent of that. Mm-hmm. Well, you are going to have a problem with that significant cash bond, aren't you? And your family who believes in you, they're going to have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. And so people jumped a little bit to conclusions. Now, I could talk all day on this.
Yeah, but it's also important to note, you've brought this up before, that bond is not a sentence.
Right.
So could you quickly recap the main purpose of a bond?
I'm going to get there.
Okay.
So, I know that I jumped, we only have, a limited amount of time to talk. Yeah. And so this is a complicated issue. Yeah. I would just ask that the public, when they're thinking about it, I have an open door policy. If somebody wants to talk about the legal system, I could talk with them all day about it. Now, I can't talk about specific cases. I can't, I don't want to talk about any cases that are active with other judges. Certainly, I can't talk about any cases that are in front of me. But we can talk about, and I think more judges should, but we can talk about with the community, what does it mean to set a signature bond? What does it mean to set a cash bond? What factors do you look at? Why, if this scenario happened, what's your thought process? So with the bond question and what's on the horizon, the purpose of bond as stated in this Constitution and the statutes is to assure appearance in court. And it's vague enough that you could interpret it as saying you can't set a cash bond unless you have a reason to believe that somebody won't come back to court. And that's really where the state of the law is. But there is wiggle room there, or at least some people look at that with some vagaries, because if somebody, let's say what happens down in Waukesha, I'm talking about an active case, but I'm not going to talk about the substance of it. Yeah. But that individual is on a large cash bond. Mm-hmm. Well, was there a finding that they weren't going to come back to court? The point of it, the matter is that when you say, do we have enough tools in our tool belt? Mm-hmm. There is a push by the Senate and the Assembly to modify the Constitution and to pass a state statute. In the rough form, it was to force anybody who has a misdemeanor bond or a bail jump or a felony bail jump to force judges to place them on $5,000 or $10,000 cash bonds. No discretion. Mm. And if that's going to go through, then that might go through. But my guess is that they're going to realize that what would happen is that every single jail bed in the state would be taken up. There wouldn't be enough housing for all of them, and then to not give the judge's discretion to be able to modify that. Now, some people might say, "Hey, that's a great idea," but what you don't understand is the actual practice of this. So here's what happens. I'll give you an example in my court. Somebody comes in, they're trafficking drugs. Let's say I put them on a $10,000 cash bond. Okay. And they're sitting over in custody. They've got an attorney. We found a public defender for them. We've given them the preliminary hearing, and they've sat there for 30, 45 days. They've got an attorney. Their case is proceeding. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they get a bed in an inpatient treatment facility. The attorneys that practice in my court know that they can come to me and will modify the bond as long as I have the information as to what facility they're going to, who's going to transport them, and that I get assurances that they are there. I will modify bond. I will not deny somebody treatment. if they are sitting on a cash bond.
Yeah.
So we get them to. So I want people to get treated.
Yeah.
I mean, but so what if they change the Constitution and they give, maybe not in this current proposed form, but to give judges discretion? So the point of that is that I'm exercising discretion to modify a cash bond to allow somebody to go to a treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
If they're telling us that we don't have any discretion, that we have to be on a $10,000 cash bond, I've lost that discretion to try and help somebody to get that treatment.
Sure.
But by the same token, judges look at that statute differently. I have set cash bonds in numerous cases, and I've never had the Court of Appeals say, nope, you're doing it improperly. There is not a lot of guidance. So I think what potentially they're trying to do, the politicians and the legislature and the executive, to give the judges a clearer road of what they can do and when they can do it, as opposed to, if you just look at the first glance of this, it's a signature bond. It's a signature bond. And that is the form of government that we live under. I mean, you are innocent until proven guilty, but obviously there are cases where the probable cause is strong. These cases, the evidence is strong that they do justify cash bonds. Mm. And we need to have a discussion as to what it looks like and what judges can do, because I think a lot of judges are holding back on that, and they get into the habit. The other issue about bonds is that, because I do cash bonds in many cases, mm-hmm. that puts pressure on the system, because now if you have people sitting in custody and you believe in our Constitution, then you have to give somebody a speedy trial. You have to provide them with an attorney. You have to make sure that their due process rights are met. And I guess that would be the synopsis of my job, is to make sure due process rights are not violated. Mm. So if they want a speedy trial and they're on a cash bond, then they should get a trial. And if they're guilty, they'll be properly sentenced. If they're not guilty, then they'll go home.
There you go.
And but by putting people on cash bonds and then them making speedy trial demands, that puts pressure on the system. So a lot of times I think what judges do is that they'll just do signature bond, because the jail is full, our calendar is full, we don't have any time, we don't have any resources, we have one judge, and this is a case I'm just going to put in this thing. And then by the same token, with plea deals, my calendar is full. I'm looking in the back of the courtroom, and there's 30 people waiting for their cases, and I'm in front of a DA and a public defender, and they have a recommendation that I'm, a plea deal that I have to look at and approve, and I might have some problems with it, but I don't have the luxury of any time to be able to say, now let's come back here. I have to really ask a lot of questions here. I mean, obviously my job is to try and identify where that is an issue and to slow down. Mm. And that's, if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it is worrying about whether or not, in trying to process this caseload in this county, have I missed anything? Did I go too fast when I should have slowed down and really addressed something?
That must be difficult. Well, because if I make a mistake, it's going to be, obviously when it comes to our original stories, our crime and court stories, I go over that thing like 10 times, and I print it and then I reread it, because I can't get facts wrong. That's significant. But I will have an error in spelling or a date wrong about a festival coming up, and I put June 4th instead of July 4th. I can quickly go back. I can make that change. I can kind of redo it. I don't know what that feeling would be like. You have 30, 50, 70 people that you see in a day, but this is maybe their first time ever in front of you or any judge. And to have that feeling of, did I make a mistake? Or not a mistake, but did I do it
Did I overlook something?
Did I miss anything? How do you handle that?
Was the plea agreement appropriate based under the circumstances? Then did I get all the information that I could have gotten in order to make a more a good decision based on the good information?
Yeah. One thing. Sure. Because we're already up against our time. But these proposals or any future proposals from the legislators, is there conversation, or are you aware of potentially future conversations, because it's great for candidates running for things and current legislators to, we had a great idea, and here's what we can do, and this will help out judges. Do they talk to all the judges? Do they get feedback first? Because maybe what they think is a good idea in life application, maybe not a good idea. Are you allowed feedback?
When the judges collectively, at least up here in the northwestern part of the state, when we became aware of this proposal, I actually had the opportunity to speak within several weeks later to one of the state senators who I've known in the past. I've known him for a long time, and whose name is on one of the bills. And I just brought it up with him, and I asked him, is there any chance of it passing in the current form? And he said, well, no, we put that out there to at least just get that idea rolling. And he assured me that the judges would have input before it got modified, even under both circumstances of Governor Evers being reelected or
someone else. Sure.
And so, so yeah, he is sure. Because, I mean, that was the biggest thing, is like there might have been some good things in it, but the whole thing was just very bulky to work with. Oh yeah, no, that judges will have an input on that, and we'll have attorneys, and everybody will look at it, and we'll be able to discuss the process of it. And hey, that's how our system works. I mean,
it should work that way. Yeah. All right, man. Thanks so much. Hey, what do you have coming up this weekend? Memorial Weekend.
Oh, I'm just not much.
Not much?
5 years of fighting for the second courtroom and seeing it to start and just it's been a kind of a busy spring, and so I'm thankfully stepping back just a little bit and enjoying some family time and trying to.
It's probably a good thing that the court system isn't open, I guess, like a courthouse and the DA's office on weekends. Because if you're a private business owner, I'm a private business owner. I work a lot of weekends. If I'm behind, I just keep working. That's how it goes. But in a weird way, I think it's kind of good that you're kind of forced not to. And maybe there's things you read and do other stuff, but it's not like you can actually just go and, all right, we'll just schedule this for Saturday morning. Because how easy would that be? That'd be great. We could get caught up so fast if we could just do 2 on Saturday.
You have to realize, while we don't have court, I mean, a lot of people think that if they see a dark courtroom, well, they're not doing anything. I had to fight over that thing. We go through the courthouse, and the courtroom is dark. What do you mean you don't have enough time? Wait a second, you really think that my whole job is just simply having court? Every hour of court I have produces at least 20 minutes of paperwork for either myself, my judicial assistant, my court reporter, the clerks. So we have lots of work doing during the day, but my weekends are not quiet necessarily. Now I can have a quiet weekend, but I'm going to be getting a call tomorrow morning. If they arrest anybody, because I have to do probable cause statements, I have to review. I get woken up on a regular basis in the middle of the night to do warrants for blood draws. So
didn't think about that. All right, well, I take that back then. I thought, I was like, well, that's nice that you get weekends off.
Yeah. Weekends off to wait for the phone call. Listen, it's a rewarding job.
You still like doing it?
Yes, I do. I mean, the challenges are great. We've accomplished things, and you get tired from some once in a while. Yeah. But when you do see people who have recovered, and they come and they talk to you and they thank you for what you did, and I get people coming in who I've ruled against, and they say, thank you so much for the way you conducted your hearing. Thank you for your job. That really is a rewarding thing. I mean, I do the best that I can. I try to be as fair as I can. I try to treat people with respect. If they come in and they have a chip on their shoulder and they treat me poorly, I'm probably going to be a little bit sterner with them. But I do love the job, and I do love trying to help our community and help people in all aspects of that. I enjoy working with the public defenders and the DAs, and I enjoy working with law enforcement. And I think we have a really great team up in Sawyer County, and in all aspects of it. And I know that the public defender's office in Spooner are looking for people to hire because they're out, and they've got a really good group of young attorneys there. And I appreciate everybody. I appreciate you talking about these issues and getting different people from all cross sections of the community. I know that sometimes judges either are too stressed out or just don't like criticism, and I don't like criticism either.
Nobody does, but
yeah, right.
Part of the gig.
I just enjoy talking about the law, about how the system works, and I know that a lot of people know something about the system, but it's difficult, and then it's an emotional issue. People get hurt. The school shooting in Texas, it's just people are upset, and I'm upset, and we just have to, I'm going to leave it at this. I would hope that wherever you fall on the political spectrum, people in our community should start asking questions, and they should start asking questions about the court system, and they do, instead of leaving just nasty comments on Facebook pages. They should ask questions. Somebody asked my question. I have a question about this. Help me answer it. Or they should be talking about, hey, what is the sheriff's department doing? What is the city police doing? What is the city council? What is the county board? What's the school board doing? What's the school administrator doing to address these issues? Now, I have no doubt that they're working behind the scenes, but we as parents certainly want to be assured too that, hey, we can't prevent a tragedy, but we can be assured that we took the steps to try and keep it as minimal as possible.
Well, the first time that you came on many years ago, I said then, and I'll say it again now, everyone that I talked to about you, all across the area, in the law enforcement and DAs, because that was the first time we had a judge on, that was you, and it's found out and asked questions, talked to some clerk of courts, clerk of courts, and they all said the same thing. He's the most active and engaged judge in our area. Now, that's not anything negative against others. I'm sure they're also active and engaged, but that was what they said. He's passionate, he's active, and he's engaged. There isn't a case that is presented before him that he takes off. So kudos to you. You do an amazing job.
And I do want to, for the other judges that are around, the 10th district, the 10th district is filled with incredible judges. And each county has unique and different problems. And I think I became vocal just because with that heavy caseload, I needed the state legislature to act. And so we both know that the best way to get an assembly person or a state senator to act is to put a little pressure on them.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Oh, John, it's been a pleasure. Next year, May 27th, 2023. Remember, you'll be on 1 year from today. Special thank you to our guest today, Sawyer County Judge John Yackel. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be joined by Washburn County Clerk of Court Shannon Anderson for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. Until then, wishing all of you a safe and a wonderful weekend, and as always, have a blessed day. Still love this picture of you, man. That is awesome.